Welcome to ReneMarie Stroke of Luck. I'm ReneMarie, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. This is a really show that touched us very personally. A dear friend and partner, and just really wonderful people have experienced a stroke again, and it really reminds us that the value of life. We just did a prayer show on this past Thursday that spoke of the value of life. And this just ties right into that. Josh had suffered a major stroke a few years ago, and Anna Gwelly had connected us, and he partnered with us on his plant-based journey. He really believed that plant-based programs help you to live a better life. And I actually believe that as well. But I believe people are asking the question, so how come he suffered another stroke? And we named the show today To Jump Right Back on the Horse, because okay, so to jump right back on the horse, because we know that things happen in life all the time. Life is not easy. Life is really challenging. And you just have to get right back on the horse and do whatever it is that you were doing prior, if it was healthy lifestyle and eating, and begin the journey again. But Josh and Debbie, his wife, are going to really share with us the struggles and the challenges and how it happened, and why, and what you need to do when you're faced with the second challenge. It really is very touching to us. And like I said, if you saw it on Facebook, I posted all the times that Josh and Debbie have been a part of our show. They've been on our show many, many times, a part of our telethon. So this really touched us very deeply. And while I'm on the subject, Bobby Baby Walker, a board member of ours, I think he's up to 5 strokes, Bobby. And Bobby is, he's facing his challenges as well. Kathy's facing her challenges as well. Plus, she's taking care of Bobby. So life is really difficult. And you got to really treasure the moments. You got to treasure the moments. Judy, I put you on mute. I just thought I'd let you know you got to put yourself off on mute, because we heard you during the. So we're going to open the panel up. I'm going to let Judy. Judy, do you want to read the press that you created? Because I think it's a good intro into just laying the groundwork for us. And I want to thank Jim in Long Island. I don't know if he's on the screen. He's not on the screen right now, or if he's going to be on the screen. But we want to thank Jim for partnering with us and allowing and doing the shows. He's really gracious, and we're praying for him because he's going for another surgery for his back. So we always keep him in his prayers. But Judy, I'm going to let you take the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Josh had a stroke May 15th of this year. His family had a history of strokes and heart attacks. 6 years prior, he had suffered a stroke, followed 2 months later by a heart attack. After his first stroke, Josh became a vegan and took care about his eating habits, and thought he was in better health. For more than a year, he's been running a reading and discussion group about the health and environmental benefits of plant-based nutrition on Zoom. Leading up to his stroke, Josh's blood pressure would spike every couple of months, as high as 150 over 95. His cardiologist would tell him to take a single low dose of Norvasc to drop his pressure to a safe level. Because of his fear of COVID, he opted for remote doctor's appointments, even though he had been fully vaccinated. He mistakenly thought he was safe. Symptoms leading to his recent stroke were tripping, teeth covered in blood, exhaustion, chin dropping to his chest, blood pressure now of 190 over 100, and a battery of tests which determined that he had a stroke that affected the entire left side of his body. Josh will discuss his hospital experience, his physical, occupational, speech, and home therapy, and where he is in the recovery stage of today.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you. And we want to thank Josh and Debbie, or Debbie and Josh, I should say it in that order, for joining us today, because we know how hard, like, people would think that you just get up, you get dressed, but when you have something like Jim that is playing something difficult in your life, it's not so easy to get up and get dressed. I saw Josh trying to put his coat on before. Everything, the simple things in life are not so easy. So I just state that because I want people to realize how precious the time is and how gracious we are for you to have joined us today. So Josh, do you want to start, or Debbie, why don't you start? Why don't you tell us where you were, and then Josh, you could tell us, what you were doing. Were you together?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So
Okay.
Debbie, you tell us the lead in. You tell us the lead in.
Okay, May 15th. Yeah. The night before the actual, are we talking about now? Yeah.
Yes. We're talking
Okay.
about
This
May
last one,
15th,
yeah.
the stroke. Yeah, we'll go back in history, but
We're not on screen yet.
Yes, we are.
Yes, you are.
Oh,
Yes, we are.
okay.
Yeah.
well, just so you know,
Yeah.
it's a delay. It's always a delay. I guess the Facebook delays it in case something, I don't know, but there's a delay. Okay.
As long as, yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Josh woke up in the middle of the night one night, and he said, my mouth is bleeding, and so I looked, and his whole mouth was full of blood. It came from out of nowhere, and we went to the hospital in the middle of the night and spent about 3 hours there, and they worked on him, on trying to stop the bleeding. And then they sent us home. At the time when we went in, his blood pressure was like 150 over something, and then it went down. But they did send us home from the ER.
And they didn't, let me just jump in for 1 second, because every time I've gone to the hospital since my stroke, my family has reminded them that I've had a stroke and to check in that. So did the hospital even bother to ask those questions, or?
No, and I didn't. We were so concerned about the mouth bleeding, we just didn't even.
Yeah. I get it. I'm just curious because the hospitals usually, it's not even, because the patients are in a frenzy, right? So it's, I believe that, don't correct me if I'm wrong, that the hospital should do their research and check on histories. So
I usually tell doctors, I'll say he had a stroke and a heart attack 6 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like my typical thing. So I probably said that, but we were most concerned about this bleeding, and they did all kinds of things, and okay, stop the bleeding. And we went home, and 2 hours later, at 7:30 in the morning, Josh said, I'm not right. I don't feel right. And I think we need to go back. So I said, go back.
And we had plans to be in Montauk. Every time, not every time, but coincidentally, the first time I had the stroke or heart attack, our daughter was visiting us. So she's visiting us again, and we had accommodations paid for. We were looking forward to being in Montauk, and our daughter was back with us again. And I didn't want to say, let's go to the hospital, but I thought it was better safe than sorry.
Wow. You were
Definitely right.
an instinct, a wonderful instinct.
Well, Josh, I basically was saying, well, Josh, you don't feel well, because we had like 2 hours of sleep. I don't feel well either. We're exhausted.
Right.
And you said, I know my body. We got to go back.
Wow.
So we did. And then they spent the whole day doing all kinds of tests to see if he had a heart attack, one test after another. And then it wasn't until they said, we're not seeing anything. You could go home, but if you stay here, now it's 4:00 in the afternoon, but if you stay overnight, we'll do an MRI.
Can I ask you a question, Debbie?
Yes.
You said, okay, Josh, your mouth was bleeding, you had a lot of blood and all that. So is that a symptom of a heart attack before a heart attack?
No,
I've never heard of that.
No, it was weird. It was very weird.
I've never heard of the mouth. Like that's the
Never.
first time that I've ever, like even in our work that we do for strokes and stuff like that and heart attacks, we've never heard of the
I-
mouth
that's
bleeding.
that's why it was so bizarre. The
Yeah.
whole thing was so
Yeah.
strange. So
Did they
here
ever
we were-
explain to you, Deb,
what?
why Josh had bleeding in his mouth?
I can explain. Just that there were tools that we had gotten for removing food from between our teeth, and I just did too good a job. So I had injured parts of my gums, and I just had dental work on the bottom
Oh,
right side, which didn't cause that, but it did. It was a source of some of the serious bleeding.
And that's where your mind went when it was bleeding, because yeah, there was a history on the mouth,
Right.
wasn't anything. Okay, so that makes, that kind of has a
that clears that
tracking.
up.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So at 4 in the afternoon, they said you could go home. We don't see anything, or stay overnight. We'll do an MRI, which they did. We got to a room. By the time we got to a room at 6 o'clock, he had had his MRI. I get a call from the doctor, and she says he had a stroke. Really? He had a
So
stroke.
he must have had the stroke when he wasn't feeling well. That's when he was
That's
having
right.
the stroke.
Well, overnight, over in the middle of the night, right? I mean, it seemed like, well, the stroke that he had, they said happened within the last 24 hours. So we thought back to what happened. And actually, Josh, you had said, didn't anybody notice that when I was going in the emergency room, didn't anybody notice that when I was walking to the bathroom, I was like, walking funny or a strange walk.
Gates.
We said, nobody was watching you walk to the bathroom, and we were concerned about your mouth.
Yeah.
It was like just a series of unfortunate events.
Josh, you should have mentioned that something's happening with the way I'm walking too.
Right.
Yeah.
But we were so concerned. I mean, his mouth was covered in blood. So that was just very.
They did stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
And there was a lunatic woman in the emergency room that had all of them engaged with her. And we walked past them to either go to the bathroom. And so, they just don't focus on anything other than the immediate in many cases.
So we stayed. So at 6 o'clock that evening, we found out that he had an ischemic.
Hemorrhagic.
No, but a lacunar.
That's a location.
Something, but it was something in the back, and it had to do with high blood pressure. So we thought
and motor function also.
Right, and balance. But it was from the back, and it was due to high blood pressure, which we realized when we went into the hospital, his blood pressure was spiking. And then when they let him go home, that first time, the blood pressure had gone down, so nobody thought anything of it.
Is there? Oh, I forgot what I was going to ask. I forget. I'll think of it.
I mean, so that's what happened. So then he was in the hospital for a few days, and they wanted him out, and we had a connection to Glen Cove acute rehab, which apparently was one of the best acute rehabs. We have friends that helped us out and let us know you have to go to an acute, not the subacute. So we got educated on that. Because the last stroke 6 years ago, he just came home. I mean, Josh was just walking with a walker in the hospital, came home. We went to physical therapy, and OT and all of that, out of the house. So it was a mild stroke that he had the first time. So this was very, very different. And
I know what I was going to ask before. Is there this? I mean, I know the stroke was caused by high blood pressure, but is there an underlying reason why he had the high blood pressure? That was my question.
Yes.
You got it. It's yours.
So, first of all, we have a history, as you had said, of heart attacks and strokes. My father died at the age of 52 of a heart attack. I'm 66 now. His father died of a heart attack at the age of 52 from a heart attack. We had for my on my mother's side, her brother, my grandmother's brother Joe, had a stroke, and he would sit around in a chair with his fist clamped tight, and he wouldn't talk, he wouldn't smile, he would say things that were hard to understand to his wife, my favorite Aunt Lee, and I, being 10 years old, that was quite a sight to see. And as I clearly had written to you about what it was like to be there, we were all around the table, and he was sitting by himself in the chair. So I thought that I wasn't going to have, I was more focused on having heart attacks. So when I had the first stroke, it came out of left field. So
Did Aunt Lee's husband, because you didn't
Joe.
mention his name, what's his name?
Joe.
Joe, did he have it? He had a stroke. That's why he
Yeah,
was sitting there with his fist and he couldn't speak. He was suffering from aphasia. So yes, okay.
So
I just wanted to understand.
the 10-year-old Josh had no idea what it was, but it's the image of him stuck with me forever. And so, matter of fact, later today, I will be attending it's called Jewish Genealogy for the Society of Long Island. I'm gonna learn how to research my family history. Turns out on my father's side, when I saw the census from 1915, they made a list of all the people that lived in their apartment. And my grandmother I only knew of her sister. Turns out they had 4 older brothers whose names were never, ever mentioned.
Wow.
I knew nothing about them. My older cousins also knew nothing about them. So,
Why is that? Why did they not mention it?
Well, I can only guess that, well, there was a pandemic back in 1918, I think the Spanish flu, and there was also World War I. So God knows. I mean, I did find out that they had the 2 of them had descendants, and I'm going to now, with the support of the Jewish Genealogy, or JGSLI, I may get a chance to start uncovering what the truth was. And given that that was on my father's mother's side, but there could be something related to what is in our gene mix.
So you're going to start to investigate that too, so people could actually, that would be a great thing. My granddaughter just suffered a seizure. 4 or 5, I forget how many. She's only 9 months old.
Wow.
And my daughter brought her for a history of I think they took her blood and they did a baseline so that we could have a history on where it came from. And so what you're doing now, Josh, we're doing for my granddaughter, so that we can know where we have to go from here. She's been diagnosed as what is it called when you have seizures? I forget.
Epilepsy?
Epilepsy. She's been with epilepsy. So anyway, so we that's really important for people to do. It's almost good for people to do when they're healthy, so that they know what to watch for and what to not watch for.
Yeah. The doctors that I have connected with, so I could learn what plant-based nutrition could do for one's health. Food that you eat either promotes disease or promotes health. So the more plant-based foods that you eat, they turn on the good genes. The meat, the animal protein, as much as I grew up eating tons of animal protein.
Right.
And that turns on the bad genes. Plant-based turns off the bad genes. And there's so many doctors that talk about that. And that really, genetics only has like a 3% impact on that equation. So
Wow.
there's so much, especially the foods that we put in our mouths, have so much more of a say over our health than medicine and the scalpel. Matter of fact, there's a documentary called Forks Over Knives.
You know what, Josh? When you were last on our show, I tried to watch that. I was so like grossed out. Like that's the only word I can think of. And it's true. It's true though. Like what they're doing. So it was really very hard for me to watch.
Well, it's 96 minutes. If you the beginning part is kind of slow, but then you start getting into the stories of the people who benefited from making those changes, where they were, and where they ended up being, where like diabetes disappears,
Right.
and things like that. Because these are serious illnesses that we have in all of our families. We see the history of it, and it's not just the genes that are passed down. It's the eating habits, the habits of behavior that really shape the nature of our life. So the question is, well, if you're doing, Josh, you're doing this, how come? And the thing is that with I'm guessing that with my history, there's no such thing as a half measure. And I love salt, and I love sugar, and I love oil. And I would start off being so committed to staying off it. Debbie even joined me, and she has a different gene profile where my in-laws lived into their 90s and 80s, and they were active square dance, folk dancing, gardening, just amazing people. So Debbie did not have my history.
My history is cancer. My history. So we've got cancer, stroke, heart attack.
But you know what, Josh and Debbie, I want to focus on Josh a little bit. That you said that your parents, your family history was people died at 50 some years old, and now you're 60 some years old. I think that the research in healthcare has really changed. Plus, you're giving yourself more years because you're at least you're doing it 60% of the time. Where I don't know, that's my, you said you would like sugar and you like salt. So at least you were battling it. At least you were in there all the time. Like the name of the show, right back on the horse. Okay. You mean we all fall off once in a while. We all make mistakes. We
grew up with eating habits that weren't right. We were eating a lot of meat, a lot of bologna and all that ham and all that
salami,
stuff, a lot of it. And as children, we went to school with sandwiches like that.
Yeah.
But as we got older, we realized this was not a good, healthy way to go. And we went back to plants and vegetables and healthy eating and fish and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like I love vegetables, and I love green salads. I eat a lot of green salad, but I also eat some chicken. Now, let me ask you this. Is organic chicken better than regular chicken, or is it just a hype?
Well, bottom line is animal protein is not good.
It's animal protein.
So it's not just chicken. It's just London broil and hamburgers,
right?
But fish. The last thing I gave up was sushi.
Oh wow!
And salmon, and I love them. Debbie eats what she wants. She can do that. Me, the reason why I had the second stroke was when we would order in food or go to a restaurant, I would say, please, either be no oil, salt, and sugar, or or it'd say, oh, it's okay if it's a little, but all of
They don't
that
always
little.
listen, though.
What?
They don't always listen.
No, no, and and so yeah, and they wouldn't. I mean, they'd say yes, and they did that, but I had no control over what was really true.
I'm going to interject here. Josh is plant-based, has a plant-based diet. However, he's taken it a step further through other doctors, and he had gone out to a place in California called
True North.
True North.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Right, and that's where he learned about being on a plant-based diet, but also SOS. So he's on an SOS diet, which means no salt, no oil, and no sugar. Now, for years, he's been living without olive oil or oil. So when we cook something, people say, well, how do you saute something or make a big pot? I mean, you make big pots of things. And
Right.
we just put veggie broth in, it's no big deal. So we've been
Or
living
wine, or
or water or
juice.
something. But it's
Oh, I
been
see.
no big. So he's basically been the no oil all along. And then when we would take in food, especially with COVID, we weren't really going out. Yes, there would be some oil in there. But then he really went to the other extreme and now has done the SOS diet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
What's the SOS? SOS is
No
no
oil.
salt, no sugar,
salt,
no
oil, or sugar.
and that's no added.
Oh, right.
No
right.
added. Okay.
No added.
And
So-
we have a cookbook that came from one of the chefs at True North, and I like it because it's simple and it's easy to cook. But it's basically when I'm making food for Josh, it's plant-based, it's no animal products, and it's no salt, no oil, and no sugar.
And
So when you cook with, let's say, wine, the food doesn't stick to the pan?
No, we don't usually cook with wine. We'll cook,
But you
for
can.
I
That's
certain-
thought Josh said that.
yes,
Yeah,
that is an option.
but we don't usually do that. We
So
usually
how do you
have
get the food to not stick to the pan?
a little bit of water, a little bit of veggie broth.
Oh, veggie broth.
Veggie broth, yeah, won't stick
No,
to the
I
pan.
know this is general, but I thought that you needed some oil, like 2 tablespoons of oil a day in your diet to keep your body well.
Yeah.
Olive oil, not regular oil, olive oil. So
Well,
to
there
talk to
are
us a little
doctors.
bit about that, Josh.
So there are doctors that say that it's okay. The doctors that I listen to are the ones who have caused healing for the people who are genetically predisposed,
Right,
that have
which you are.
family history.
Yes.
And so the stories of healing are astonishing. That's why Forks Over Knives or others, actually the Game Changers is a more recent documentary about how it impacts elite athletes, both in their body's recovery time, any kind of healing that they have to do, and in their performance.
Wow.
Sport. James Cameron, who made the movie Avatar, made Game Changers. Arnold Schwarzenegger also was involved with that. So there's a lot of agreement in all directions for different things. People who have agendas, people who will make more money by people continuing to be sick so that their services are needed, that they're not healed.
Yeah.
Keep the certain industries really doing very well.
Right. Well,
And-
that's even like when, and I don't want to, this is not about hospitals or anything. This is about like specific doctors, or they're like, just let's say for instance a heart doctor's only looking at the heart. Like when Josh went to the hospital for his bleeding mouth, they didn't look at his whole history. They didn't look at him as a whole person. They looked at him only for his heart. So sometimes that's an issue as well, because you need someone that's going to take your whole picture of your body, not just your specific thing you're coming in for, right? Am I correct in my mind thought?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's why you're saying that doctors make money off of you being sick, or doctors, or the industry makes money and insurance, but sometimes it's just what they're educated on. They're just like in that zone.
Their specialty is in that
Yeah,
area.
yes.
Now, I just want to defend doctors, because I know
Yes.
neither one of us would be here today.
Oh, yes,
They're
yes.
not alone. They can produce miracles. The technologies march forward rapidly. It's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
So that I've had physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, acupuncture.
Yeah.
These are part of my team,
Yeah.
and they really have enabled me to be where I am today. On the downside of, like, Glen Cove is one of the top Long Island hospitals as far as rehab goes, but they only have 3 hours of rehab each weekday. And they also have recreational and art therapy. I get bored not being with people.
Yeah.
So for 4 weeks, I was in the rehab hospital. Again, it was supposed to be the best, but because of the fear of COVID, because of the fear of, God forbid, I couldn't walk. I literally had to relearn how to walk. I'm still learning. I can walk without a walker and a cane, and it's a battle every day, but it's a great battle, because I'm rejoicing in the progress.
Yeah.
This is my left hand. I can move. This
Wow.
was dead on the day of my stroke.
Wow. That's incredible. And
and-
I just want to pop in and say that if I was saying something that was putting doctors down, that wasn't my intention. What I do believe, and we always talk about this, is that you have to find the right fit for you, doctor wise, right? Because everybody does not have a connection with a doctor that's gonna look at them at the whole body, and to know their history and all that kind of stuff. So and the other thing is, we always talk about on the show, is really important, like Debbie is your advocate. She's your advocate. When you go into the hospital or something, she's your advocate. She knows your history. She can work with the doctors to make sure that you're getting the care that you specifically need, not that the general person would need. Because like you said, Josh, each person is so different. You both have different histories, right? So you have to be different than Debbie's care. Debbie's care has to be different than your care. So yeah, so I totally agree. And doctors like Dr. Beculus, and we've had some incredible doctors on this show. I can't even tell you how blessed we are, and the stories that have come from those doctors. And I believe it's like people are like priests, and like and I don't mean that in a religious way. I mean that they're people. People are people. Doctors are people. Accountants are people. Financial people. We are, singers are people. We all have what you think we should be doing, but on the back end, we're just people trying to survive in life and make it and do the best we can. So that's what my thought patterns are.
Yeah.
Also,
And when you go to a doctor, if you could really talk to them, and whether they're really paying attention, they're listening, and they're contributing to and you should go with a list and mention that these are the things that you want to discuss, and that they address it, and that they don't overlook it or just rush you away, because then you're with the wrong doctor.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to go to a doctor with someone who can take notes, someone
Definitely.
who can, as you say, the list. We always have a list of questions. I've got a notebook for the heart doctor, and now we're keeping track of blood pressure really consistently because it's really made the difference.
Definitely.
And we're with a doctor that Josh really, we both really love now. I mean, he believes in the type of food diet that Josh is on, and he's tweaking different medicines and stuff. So we're very comfortable.
He's working with them, Deb.
Oh, we're very happy with him.
Yeah, there's something I want to make sure that what is also covered is there are certain terms that I became familiar with this time around. One is called spasticity.
We did a show on that.
Spasticity, yes, that's when your arm freezes up. And
Yeah.
if they're not exercising your arm, it will freeze in that spot. Or if let's say Debbie was exercising your arm, and then all of a sudden the doctors decided to put it in some kind of a cast, it would lock up.
Yeah, and muscles atrophy. So
I
that's
have atrophy.
yeah.
I do. But but at least I'm aware of it. And sometimes, not enough, but sometimes I take a nice warm bath and I can extend it, but I should do it more because
What about a heating pad, Renee?
Because there is, I do have it. Yeah, thank you. I do put a heating pad on. Not enough though. I should really do it on a
When you
regular basis.
relax, you should
Yeah.
put a heating pad on and try to stretch your arm out.
Because there is some atrophy. There is some atrophy
Yeah.
in it. There is
Yeah.
some atrophy in there.
There's
What-
also edema, which is swelling.
What's that,
From
Josh?
edema, edema, which is fluids accumulate because that body part is not moving much. Then there's neuroplasticity, where when you have a stroke, neurons die,
Yeah.
but there are other neurons nearby. By doing a certain amount of physical activity, that you actually will start teaching those other neurons to come online and take over what cannot be done by the damaged neurons or the dead neurons. And the other thing is part of that the spasticity is the stiffness. The muscles tighten up and stay tight, and that the exercise, the stretching, will open up the joints that are locked. Like I had a frozen shoulder. Now I had a frozen shoulder 3 years ago, and we saw a acupuncturist. I could not move my arm. Within 3 weeks, we had tickets to go to Barcelona, and it looked like that was going to go up in the air, up in smoke. Within 3 weeks, I had full mobility from not just the work that he did with needles, but he gave me exercises to do. Turns out that acupuncturist is a stroke victim. He's a stroke specialist, which I didn't know because I went to him 3 years ago because I was more concerned with the shoulder. And to find out this time around, I'm a specialist in strokes. So every week there are needles that are put in my scalp. It's a good thing I don't have a lot of hair. And also here. And it's just between the physical therapist and so important, you must, and you should listen to this, Renee. It's so important every day, gently, slowly. I had believed it had to be painful, and I was terrified that I would have to deal with the pain. There were a few early episodes when the massage therapist and the acupuncturist was really tough on me, and friends who were nurses, they one of them went through a very painful surgery on her knee, and they did stuff that was murder for her. So I thought, through her experience, that's what lay ahead of me, and I learned that it doesn't have to be that way. So gently, even with what I do here, before I get out of bed, I'm taking care of a couple of exercises with a pole to work the shoulder and parts of my arm.
Right.
So every day that you don't do it, your body is going back to where it had been. It's
That's
shitty,
very true.
but it's been a hard lesson, and I am seeing the rewards for really sticking to it, and I keep looking to raise the bar.
And I
Right.
want to just mention that if you have spasticity in your arm and nothing is done about it, it's going to lock up and could end up like this.
So there's a couple of things that I just want to comment on. One is that we had started out with a regular physical therapist who was doing the walking and things physical therapists do, and a regular occupational therapist. And through our going to our orthopedist, who I've been to for many, many, many years, decades, he set us up with the OT is now a hand specialist, and she just works on his hand.
Wow.
And the PT is just, since the frozen shoulder, the PT
Right.
now is a shoulder. She only works on his shoulder.
But she
And
does
she's
the whole
starting
body.
to doing the whole, but she's more concerned about the frozen shoulder in terms of like, because he is starting to walk a little bit, but he needs that also.
Mm.
A couple
Yeah.
things.
So I had no idea how challenging a stroke could be after you get out of the hospital, because those three terms that I use, I had no idea what was going on, except that it was getting worse. And it wasn't until we actually started going to an outpatient clinic, and I have 6 appointments every week between occupational, physical, and acupuncture.
Mm. Oh my
Okay,
God.
now I have another question. What about insurance? Is the insurance
Medicare.
taking,
We're on Medicare.
is it,
And it's costing us a lot of money because we're on Medicare. Our secondary is Empire, which is supposedly the best. I was a teacher, but it's $25 every time we go. I hesitate to, the stack of papers that come in every week are just enormous, and I haven't figured out exactly how much we're paying, but obviously this is what we need to do. I do
Yeah.
want to mention something about so many people for the last now November 15th, it'll be 6 months since the stroke, and so many people all along have asked me, well, so what's the diagnosis? What do they think is the
Prognosis.
no, the prognosis? I'm sorry,
Prognosis.
not diagnosis. What's
Right,
the
right, right.
prognosis? And I'm like, anytime we speak to any doctor, they all say the same thing. Obviously, there's no prognosis because it depends on who you are. It depends on
Right.
how much you do your exercises. It depends on how much time you're committing to do it. So they never will say, and believe me, we're at 6 months. I would love to somebody to say, he'll be absolutely fine in a year, but we have no.
you have to work
guarantee of that
very
at all.
hard. You have to work very hard. Everybody should know, if you've had a stroke, you have to work very hard in all of the areas, speech therapy, occupational, every single way you can. You have to work hours on it daily and be motivated, because you can get better, but you have to work at it. And nobody's going to be able to do it for you. You've got to do it yourself. And Josh, you've got a great motivator sitting right next to you.
Yeah.
That's why we're blessed, because Josh, this is something I've been doing a lot of research on, and each time I talk to somebody that has experienced a stroke or brain trauma as well, is like you understand the goals. You understand that it takes us to do our work. Like you just said that to me, right? You just told me that every day before you get up, you do it. But a lot of stroke patients and brain trauma patients, their brains are so scrambled, speaking like American terms, that they don't understand what it takes. So the research I am doing is to come to that bridge to help them to understand. How do we share with somebody that doesn't understand how to, that this they have to do it. They can't do it by them. They can't, other people can't do it for them. Debbie can't, all she could do is, another book I'm writing is love you through it, is support you, encourage you to do it. That's all she could do for you. And you get that, I know. But what I'm trying to help people to understand is, first of all, you have to have compassion and empathy for people, because sometimes they don't know what they're doing or why they're doing it. And they have to be able to do it by themselves. So I think I commend you both, because you both are doing it for, supporting each other.
There was a point when I came back from rehab, I was an animal. I was impatient. I could do everything before that for myself, but now it was like I needed a wheelchair. I needed help, and Debbie had to prepare food, not just for herself and our son who's living with us now, but for me also. When I was in rehab, they brought food to my bed. I got them to make vegan dishes. And if it wasn't the way I like it, or that I would make it, I would be a monster.
But that's not your fault. But that's not your fault. That's exactly what I'm talking about right here and right now. You had no control over, like they said when I was in the hospital, that I was a bear. They said that, and could you imagine? I mean, I never knew I was that way. Because your brain, my brain had a trauma. Our brains have a trauma. Our brains need to settle and be at peace and regroup a little bit and defragment, the way I talk about it. But so it wasn't your fault that you were that way. But Debbie, I'm sure, loved you through it. She just,
she did. And she told me, I am not sleeping with you anymore. and
I didn't say it that way.
Well,
no, okay, so listen to my story. Okay, so that's not really how it was. Okay, so he would be up all night urinating in a urinal, but he couldn't get out of bed. So I would have to, I felt like when I had babies, where I wasn't sleeping at all. So in the beginning, I want to talk about adjustment. The adjustment for the first month, let's say, I mean, specifically the first 3 weeks, was intensely horrible. It was so difficult. I was running on no fuel. Josh had to ask me to do every little thing. And with the food thing, okay, can you get this for me? Can you get that for me? I was constantly running. I wasn't eating. It was terrible, horrible. Not like a stroke. This was a whole new experience. And I was running ragged, and I was numb, and we have a really wonderful relationship, and we don't really yell at each other. We kind of pretty much communicate as best we can. We were yelling. I was yelling at him. He was yelling at me. It was horrible. I saw the death of this marriage, and I thought to myself, I can't do this anymore. I cannot do this. And so I sat Josh down and said, I can't do this. I can't do this. You're so mean to me. I can't believe you're so mean to me. And I'm so mean to you. So our adjustment, don't think for a second we've been just, on this little
Yeah,
little-
but the truth is, you sat him down
yes,
and you kind of like you shifted his brain.
I did.
If you didn't shift it,
I
if you
know.
didn't shift it, if you would have
I know.
been like loving them through it is not just okay, whatever you want. That you have to provide for them and give them whatever they need, and then be there for them. And that's what you did. You still wanted him to respect you and respected him enough to sit him down and not just leave, not just walk out the door and say, I can't take this anymore, I'm out of here. Like
Right.
that's not the right way. You kept your commitment to him.
Well, the other thing is, oh wait, I was going to say something. What I realized, when they talk about when you're in a plane and they say if you have a kid next to you, you take the oxygen out first,
Right,
so that
right.
you can then. So that really reminds me of how this went, and how it went was I was starving, I wasn't eating. I'd go to eat, and he needed me for this. I'd go to. It was really like having a baby, like a baby's, toddlers. That whole experience. It really brought me
So
back.
when you talked to him, Deborah, when you talked to him, did he understand?
He got it, because I really, really was at the end of my rope. I wasn't about to leave. I wasn't about to send
He
him
said,
back.
I
in the
love
bed.
you, but I cannot keep
I-
going like
This,
this.
we can't do it this way.
Right.
I'm here for you. I don't want to send you to the back to the shed to sleep in the shed. That's what he was referring to. And then one night I said, I just need a night's sleep. So I actually came into the den and slept in the den. And that's what Josh meant by I wasn't sleeping with him, because I needed that. I was a caregiver
Of course.
that needed the night's sleep so that I could think clearly and help him.
As a
I knew-
caregiver, I'm sorry, as a caregiver, we give so much that we don't take care of ourselves.
Right.
And you finally realized. that
I
you
realized,
know-
and I realized that there were times where I was like, wait a minute, I had to learn how to, instead of jump every time he wanted something, like, oh, I need this, oh, and I'm running. And then what it took me was a full 3 weeks before I said, you know what? I need to eat something before I do this for you.
Right.
If it's
Right.
not an emergency, it's going to have to wait a minute. So I had to learn how to really communicate that, because without
I
communicating that, it was deadly for me too.
I understand that, yes.
And we've both done courses that have improved our capacity to see what we are doing, receiving the messages from who we're speaking to. I knew I was a monster, but that night when I was in the bedroom alone,
Mhm.
I had fallen down. I managed to pick myself up. I got back into bed, and I was shivering, and it wasn't winter, and I was shivering, and it occurred to me, this may not go well. And it was like, that was like the moment where I knew I really had to dig in. That was when the spasticity was peaking, and it seemed like it was going the wrong way, and I was not in good. It was a moment of choosing to really take this on, but it's taken moments and moments and moments of really taking on what has to be done.
Also, in terms of that, in the beginning, you talked about loving someone. It's not enough just to. So in the beginning, I would, I knew Josh had all these exercises to do, and Josh is like, he's like he wants to be the A+ student, So, I knew that he's the kind of guy who, oh yeah, when he would have any kind of physical therapy, he'd come home and he'd do the physical therapy. He was really good at that. But after this stroke, he didn't do it. He didn't want to do it, or he was stopped from doing it for whatever reasons, a multitude of reasons. And so I felt that it was my job to then say, Josh, you got to do your hand. And every time I reminded him, he'd jump at me. So he and what I was frustrated with was seeing him not doing the work.
Right.
And knowing, oh my God, this is not going to look good. We still don't know how it's going to be at the end. The other thing I wanted to mention was I found a friend told me about a support group on Facebook. And it's really great. And it's called Caregiver Wives of SS, stroke
Say
survivors.
it slower.
Caregiver Wives. So it's only women. All around
Caregiver wives.
of SS, stroke
Can you
survivors.
send us the link for that?
stroke.
Can you send me the link for that?
Sure, I'll have Josh figure out how to
Yeah,
do
just
that.
the link, just so that we could, because we'd like to invite them on the show. And
Perhaps.
actually,
Yeah,
Well,
you'll send it to me also.
I would like to have them on the show with you, Debbie, but I also want to invite you both back to talk about insight and relationships, the struggles that relationships, because Josh, you're very insightful. You know, you listen to your body, you listen to what it's telling you, and that's really a key to recovery, is being insightful. It's a key to life, I think. To be insightful is to going down that path. So if you wouldn't mind, like in January or March, because Judy's got the 2000, I don't know where she is, but we'd love to invite you back now that we know your story and stuff. But let's delve into really the day-to-day stuff. That's really hard. It's really hard because people talk about strokes all the time, but like they don't know the
Relationships are very
struggles that
important.
you guys have had to deal with in your relationship. So we would love to invite you back. And then
Renee, I have just a quick question. So are you talking about two shows, one about insight
Yes.
and relationship and the other about the caregivers' wives?
yeah,
With Debbie.
that Facebook website, Facebook link, because
Okay,
that'll open up a whole different show for people to be able to discuss, and that's what the support group is about, just discussing. So we're actually over our time, and Gabriel is sitting in the waiting room, but we want to thank you so much, and conversation is definitely going to continue, and we're blessed that Josh and Debbie, or Debbie and Josh, were able to share with us and today their story. And of course, thank you so much to Judy, who does, with this show would not be what it is without Judy. She does an incredible job and dedicated, and this show would not be on for 7 years if it wasn't for Judy. That's the truth.
thank you so much.
So,
And Josh, I will be calling you very shortly.
Okay. Look forward
thank you to
it.
Jim
Thank
back in
you.
Long Island. We're blessed. Have a wonderful day, and we want to see you grow, get better, Josh, over the next two months, and have a wonderful holiday, and keep doing what you're doing, honestly. And Debbie, we're happy that you found a support group. And Anna Gwelly actually runs a support. You didn't know that? She actually called me yesterday. We're on the phone about her support program. So I'll hook you up with her.
Okay.
She's got her book is Caregiver.
Right.
Yes, she's got a whole program going on, and so she would be awesome to have on that show with the women. And that's it. We have to go because poor Gabriel. I'm going to let him in while we're playing our.
All right. Thank you so
show.
much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much. We're blessed.
Thank
Jim, you could take it away and play
Yeah.
the ending. Is Jim okay?
Yeah.
Jim?
Let's blow our kisses.
Oh, yes. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Is Jim okay?
God bless you all.
Jim is not answering.